Well, thank you again, everyone. Not to be repetitive, but we are celebrating the UN the University Global Coalition's SDG Action and Awareness Week. This week, it's a little bit of a mouthful, and we are pleased to be representing the University of Nebraska-Lincoln in the USA, talking about how we have a program that is a co-curricular program advancing careers and the SDGs. So we're not talking specifically today about zero hunger or climate action as much. We are talking about kind of the SDGs as a large group of global goals and how we can pair professional development and career preparation for our students as part of this program in whatever way they participate in this program. Does anyone want to throw in the chat where you're coming from? Maybe your institution that you are representing or that you are a part of. And maybe if you have a favorite SDG or an SDG that really is the most meaningful for you, go ahead and throw those in the chat. Don't see any so far, but I will see. Oh, SDG 15 from Louise. All right. 13 from Abby. Okay. Hannah, thanks for all the information. University of Southern California, Los Angeles, number 7. We have some multiple SDG fans over here. That's always good because, as we all know, they are incredibly interconnected. Good, good. This is helpful information. So I'll just jump in. Our program is called the UNL SDG Scholars Program. And it is a non-credit bearing co-curricular program that we have students involved in and have been involved in for about the last 2 years. It's been a little bit of a slow start, and we kind of started with a pilot class, but we have found that there is just a huge amount of excitement that students have around this program about the opportunities and the connections they can make, the learning they can do. And also students in this program can also do a digital badge or earn a digital badge or credential at the end if they choose to. They can participate however they like, but that is one kind of outcome that students can kind of add to their list, put on their CV, put on their LinkedIn, and share with their peers, their networks, their employers, or potential employers that they are really passionate about doing things that are meaningful and that they're capable of applying their skills, their knowledge, and their interests towards these big global challenges. So we're going to share about that program today. I, again, do appreciate you all being here. Got Jamestown Community College in Jamestown, New York. Interested in SDG 10. All right, good deal. So we're going to keep on going. Oops. So we all are pretty aware of the SDGs by now. The reason why we use the SDGs is just because it's a framework that is recognized globally. As you all are aware, this is definitely not a US-based thing. This is not just a Europe thing, not just an Asia thing. This is a thing that the UN member countries came together to decide on. And because of that, it is something that's recognized throughout the world. So at Nebraska, we have our grand challenges, which are oftentimes quite aligned with the SDGs, but those aren't recognizable outside of Nebraska per se. And so these things are really useful for students to be involved in that are recognizable across the US, no matter what institution you're in, but also around the world. Our students want to be having global careers these days, or at least have experiences locally or globally that kind of bring in that world element. But before we get to that piece, students, I think, from what I've heard from individuals, they want to do something meaningful. Not that their majors don't allow them to do that. I was an advertising and public relations major back in undergrad. And I honestly didn't think that I could do something that was meaningful with that. I thought I could work for an agency, maybe work for industry, like a big company, and do in-house marketing and advertising, or do PR for maybe an organization, maybe a nonprofit or something. But I really didn't think that my work could be doing things that are good for the world. And that is such a shame. It is such a shame to hear a student, to think of a student who doesn't feel like they can apply their unique talents and life experience and passions towards these big global challenges. Every student, no matter what their major, should be able to do that. So that's one piece of what this program does, is it allows these students to, really focus on at least one, sometimes more than one, goal that really interests them, really gets their fire going. And it's open to any major. Our program is housed within our College of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Nebraska, which includes things like food, water, ag, biological systems engineering, entrepreneurship, rural development, a big swath of disciplines. But there are students from all over who are part of our program, students who are undergrads and even grad students. We have freshmen and we have doctoral students, which is kind of amazing in this program, and students from all over Nebraska, from all over the US and the world, which really, really enriches the program. We'll get to that in a little bit. Like I said, the SDGs provide a global language and framework recognizable by others. So if someone puts on a CV that they have done something with the SDGs, it's going to be recognizable by a potential employer back in that student's home country, perhaps, or in a new country that the student wants to move to, wants to begin their career. The SDGs can really enhance students' capacity for systems thinking. If you've looked at any SDG, it is very obvious quite quickly that they are extremely interconnected with all the other SDGs and many other issues. So you start to talk about zero hunger, but then you get into issues of climate action and the life on land and probably no poverty and reduced inequalities. And you keep, every time you pull a thread kind of in the quote that I can't remember the famous individual who said, you pull a thread and you realize it's connected to everything else. And that's a critical skill for today's world, is students being able to understand complexity, being able to work maybe specifically with complexity science, which is a bigger and bigger field these days, but be able to have some capacity to understand systems, to understand dynamics of systems, and how that applies to an organization, how that applies to a society, how that applies to the whole world when you think of big world challenges like climate action. And these are, when we don't know what is going to be out there for jobs for students in the future, we do know that understanding complexity, understanding systems and working within systems, and having critical thinking, which really comes in with this, are going to be critical, especially when we just have no concept of what those jobs are going to be. But we do know they're going to be complex, and we do know they're going to require these skills to be able to be successful. And last, we want to encourage students not to say, okay, I'm going to be this career, this job title, and everything has to kind of silo and have blinders in my path towards only this. That sometimes can be a dead end for a student. If they find, maybe they take their whole undergraduate career preparing for that, and they might realize that that's not really for them. That's kind of how I felt at the end of my undergraduate career. I studied advertising and public relations, the focus on PR and strategic communications. I didn't really want to do it by the end of my undergraduate career. I had great experiences. I developed great skills and usable skills, and I could get a job, but I didn't feel passionate about what I was doing. And we don't want to lead students into these very narrow pathways when so many of our careers are interconnected. And oftentimes our career paths change. We are not going to necessarily be in one position for, like, once we graduate, for the rest of our working lives. We know now that maybe was the way things were, but it's definitely not very often the case these days. All right, so this is just a little bit of an understanding of what the badge entails. This is not a requirement for students to be part of the SDG Scholars Program, but it's just kind of an overview if you're curious. They take part in some online MOOCs, so a massive online open course from various institutions in the world. That also kind of engages them with other individuals, other professionals, maybe faculty members or industry professionals who are putting on these courses through the SDG Academy. And they understand what that goal looks like through one perspective. Maybe it's food systems in the Mediterranean, or maybe it's some other issue with a kind of localized context or more of a global perspective. Then they engage with a local and a global expert as part of this badge. And this is something that's open, again, to all the students in the program. If they just want to keep coming to these expert sessions because they find it really valuable, they absolutely can. They're really welcome to do that. And then they have an ideation and exchange kind of session with one of their peers. The only stipulation there is that they can't do that with a peer who's from their home community. So here in Nebraska, we have a lot of kids from small towns coming from across the state. Most of our population center is in the east, in Lincoln and Omaha. We have lots of folks who live across the state. So you can't have two Omaha kids talking about this, talking about their goals in the Omaha context. It has to be some other community. So it could be two Nebraska students, someone from Scottsbluff and someone from Lincoln, for example. It could be a student from Chicago and a student from Columbus, Nebraska, or it could be a student from Kigali, Rwanda, and someone from Norfolk, Nebraska, or from a small town in Idaho. We do I think this is a really important opportunity for students to engage with a peer that they maybe wouldn't have a chance to do otherwise. It might be someone who they have met before, could be someone who's in their same major and they've never had a class with them, could be someone from a totally different major, they've never had an opportunity to chat. In the course of this opportunity, they have to talk about, what does this challenge look like in my community? What does zero hunger look like in Lincoln, Nebraska? What does it look like in Berlin, Germany? Looking at understanding how those differences play out, what are common challenges, maybe common opportunities, what are novel innovations and approaches that individuals from different parts of the world are using. And I feel like that's a really important piece of the professional network building, not only of the experts, the folks in the field midway through their careers or well into their careers. Students also need to understand that lateral networking is incredibly important too. So I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, but the big focus of this program to me is that we look at these global goals and global learning kind of as an environment in which our main goal is to drive to professional development and professional network building. So it's kind of the environment in which we're in, and how we learn and we look at the things inside of that environment. But what we're doing in the meantime, what we're doing kind of on the road is this professional development piece. Students learn how to network oftentimes in college. Some have many opportunities, some have few, and that is oftentimes a matter of privilege or money or access or knowing the right people or having the right major, going to the right school. And I don't want that to be the case. No student should be kept from having these fulfilling professional network building opportunities just because they don't have the money to go to a conference and do that networking, or they don't have the money or they can't take off their full-time job that they need in order to pay for their schooling. It's really important that this is exclusive, or this is not exclusive, and that students are able to access. And that's a big piece of what I try to do with this program. That network, as all of us who are in our professional lives know, is key. It's all about who you know. I hate that that's the case in some ways, but knowing folks is the way to professional success. And it's also the way to bettering yourself as a professional, understanding what's out there, and really having a meaningful and fulfilling professional path. And that those networks need to be both local and global. So our students in Nebraska, they need to have a local network for internships that they want to get here, or maybe a job. Maybe they're from Nebraska and they want to stay right here. But the students need a global network as well. They need to have the understanding of how things are being done in Japan, how things are being done in Niger, in order to really have a broad and rich perspective on these global challenges, in order to really have a much more innovative approach to them, and in order to have a much wider perspective and option kind of area for their professional path. Not to mention, individuals who are coming to Nebraska from across the world, our international students, which we have quite a number, they also want to have a network in Nebraska if they want to do maybe OPT in Nebraska or end up getting sponsored for a visa and staying in Nebraska. But if they want to return to their own country, they might have to start from scratch. They don't have any network outside of just the US and the Midwest in Nebraska. So that's really important for us to help, through this program, develop that for our students. These students get to explore a huge array of possibilities for careers. I think that's a limiting factor oftentimes for students, that they have no idea what is out there. They think of a lot of traditional careers, but they don't know that you can be a combination of things all at once, or that you can have a career that has you being so many different areas, maybe in one field or maybe across several fields. and how that can contribute really positively to your career success, what you can kind of bring in the innovation space to the table at your career. And so we do try to do that in this program. Applying your skills across disciplines, understanding how marketing skills and communication can be incredibly important for communication, or for science, for example, in the science communication field. Understanding how your skills in the research, the scientific research area, could really benefit you in law or in policy. We want to be able to see students cross-pollinate the experiences and their majors with other areas. We also just want to hone future skills for a future world. That is something I kind of alluded to earlier, but we don't know what we're going to face. We know some things that we're going to be facing in the future, but we don't know exactly what jobs and what skills are going to be needed both now and going forward. So we do want to try and develop some of these very applicable skills that go across the board, applicable now and later as we go forward in the future. So I keep talking about our experts, and these folks are really amazing. I'm going to give you just 1 minute to take a look here and maybe percolate on some questions if you possibly have. We're about halfway through, and I will be right back. Now, as any of you who are parents can understand, I had to grab an unhappy baby. So we're going to have a dual presenter situation here, if you don't mind. Any questions that people have thought of after I've given you a couple moments to kind of take in some of this information, let it sink in, let it percolate? Maybe the chat. All right. Just that we look like I have some interesting folks who are supporting the SDGs, and we absolutely do. A question from Louise. Interesting question. You mentioned that students join. Are faculty allowed to? That is a wonderful question. You know, I would welcome faculty who wanted to just be part of the program in general. Most of the time, we've had faculty who serve as experts in a local or global sphere, but no reason why we couldn't bring in someone just who wanted to be part of it, generally learn, generally participate. At this moment, we are limited to UNL students and UNL faculty. So that's from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. We do hope to expand access. We hope to expand access to some of our community college partners and technical college partners across the state and the area, and our partner institutions throughout the US and the world. At this moment, the badges, for example, are only available to be earned by our students just because of some early limitations with the program. But I would welcome folks to just be a part. If you'd like to join in on some of our expert sessions, I think we can make that work for you. Okay, are any of these subject matter experts your faculty? Great question. Some are. It's probably, I'd say, maybe a quarter or a third of our local and global experts are Nebraska faculty. I try to make a really good sort of variety of our experts. So some people are going to be within academia, and that's an important expert zone, no doubt about it. But we have a lot of folks who are in NGOs or nonprofit organizations. We have entrepreneurs. We have folks who are in industry or have had a lot of experience in industry. And I feel like that's a really important piece to show our students too, because while some students will graduate and go into academia, research and teaching is their passion, and that's what they go and do and follow for the rest of their life. That may be. It's not massively common that that's going to be every student's path. There just realistically aren't enough positions for that to be the case. And there are so many ways we can make impact, not only as a faculty member, no disrespect to all of our incredible, impactful faculty members, but there are many other ways to do good and to make a difference and have a meaningful career outside of academia. So I'm just going to share a couple things about some of these experts. And one thing I want to say before I jump in is that all of these individuals, they inspire me. They're all doing such incredible work, but they all have said, I will do this because I want to give back to students, just like someone has given to me. Someone mentored me. Someone helped me understand what career options were out there for me. And someone kind of showed me a path that I didn't know existed when I was younger in my career. And all of these individuals are so inspiring. And they've all said, I want to do that for someone else. The time commitment for this, if you're wondering how I managed to get so many of these really exciting individuals, is just 1 hour once if they want to do it. If they want to continue and be a recurring expert, because we do have students coming, in joining at all times of the year. And so if we have someone like Luis Marcos here up the top right next to good health and well-being, from the Comunidad Maya Pishan Ishim, he can be an expert every semester if he has the time and inclination, and he's going to engage with our students, with different students each time probably. Perhaps there might be repeats because they really liked him last time. We have folks like Janira here on the top, slightly lower, but top-ish left near the Zero Hunger. She's an economist based in La Paz, Bolivia. She's a young professional, but she is passionate about Zero Hunger, and she is an incredible font of knowledge and innovation about what they're doing with really limited resources in La Paz to really advance food security and nutrition security in her city. And it's an incredible experience for our students to be able to hear such different perspectives. They get to hear from someone like Mike Schambach Miller here in the center. He is the founder of Produce from the Heart, which helps to reduce food waste and help get highly nutritious food to food insecure individuals in Lincoln, Nebraska, and in other communities in Nebraska. You get to hear from folks in the climate action area. For example, George Burba, who is he is so multi-talented. He's creating so many networks around climate action, but currently is a scientist at LICOR and is a faculty fellow, or I believe an industry fellow with the Water for Food Institute, has so many things going on, and is this brilliant, well-connected international scholar himself. Came from Russia to work out in Valentine, Nebraska as a young professional and has been in the state ever since, and is connected with people all over the world, and the richness that can bring and the benefits that can bring to our students is really hard to quantify. Getting connected with one of these folks with a huge network could be, it could really have unending possibilities for a student. Or one of my very favorite individuals in this program is Balkisa here, right just to the right of the climate action logo. She was a former Mandela Washington Fellow at the university a couple years back, and she is a climate activist and nonprofit founder in Niger. And she works especially in the space of reforestation, but it doesn't just stay in reforestation in her area. It's also food security. It's planting climate adapted native trees, replanting these trees and re-emphasizing, repopularizing, re-promoting native foods that were traditional to the folks who have always lived there, and showcasing that they have incredible nutritional benefits, that they can be part of a climate solution, they can be part of a poverty reduction solution. And she's just, her expert chat was one of my favorites because it showcases how incredibly and inextricably interconnected so many of these goals are. And when you advance one, you oftentimes advance numbers of others. We all know sometimes you advance one and it kind of makes another retreat, because certain things don't always all, the rising tide doesn't always lift all boats in this scenario, but oftentimes it can in the right ways, and when we really innovate and be creative about these solutions. You have Laban, who was with Zambuni Specialty Coffee and Auction, who's helping in the poverty space, but also in the decent work and economic growth, as a result of that, reducing food insecurity and hunger in the communities of his home in Kenya, and helping those coffee farmers get a reasonable and honorable wage for their hard work and for their incredible products, instead of having to lose so much in the marketplace, in the commodity markets, and everything going to the middleman. He's developing direct markets for this outstanding coffee, including that of his, I believe, older than 100-year-old grandmother, who is still farming on their land and producing this coffee. And it's incredible that the possibilities we have for these students to connect them with these individuals. I know it may not seem that, revolutionary, but these individuals are not necessarily all connected from UNL. Some of them were just folks that I have met. I met Janira in a UN training, digital UN training a couple years ago. Balkisa came as a Mandela Fellow. Luis came, or he and I got together because we placed another fellow from the Americas with his organization to kind of learn for a summer. Rua and Rua is an amazing individual as well, who works in the public health and health disparity reduction kind of area in Kansas. She and I were part of the U.S. Global Leadership Coalition Next Gen cohort. So we just pulled together so many of these connections that otherwise would not be in one group, and students have access to all of them. They get to hear from them in these chat sessions. They get to learn about careers they may not have heard before, pathways that may be non-traditional, but oftentimes end up to be quite meaningful and enriching careers. Or maybe having numerous careers all at once. The guy in the top, or kind of top bottom right, underneath the good health and well-being icon, is Bruno Caro. He is a nurse. He is an emergency responder as a firefighter and paramedic, and he's a healthcare entrepreneur, all in Omaha. And I'm not sure that students necessarily know they can be multiple things at once if they want to be. He is definitely a go-getter and maybe an overachiever. He's incredible. But the chat that our students got to have with him and hearing about what he's doing to advance good health and well-being for Omaha residents. One of the students in the chat told me afterwards she wanted to change maybe to the healthcare field after hearing from him, from being in an education or a higher education kind of track. Let's see, I'm going to see from the chat here. Can I confirm these experts are involved with the program by meeting with an individual student to exchange information about the goal? Are the conversations recorded so other students can watch them? Great question. It is actually there in groups. So any student who's pursuing the Zero Hunger track, for example, they'll chat with Janira, and they'll chat with Georgina up here, and they'll have a chance to engage with two experts at minimum. So a local expert somewhere in Nebraska or the Midwest, and someone outside of the US, or who's born outside of the US and continues to engage in global work. So those are group sessions. Any student in the program can attend, even if they are a climate action scholar and they really want to attend the Zero Hunger expert session, they're totally welcome. So these are recorded, and all of our students have access to them at any point, including students that join. Maybe we chatted with Balkisa last semester, and a student joins this semester, and maybe Balkisa is not able to make it this semester as an expert, but they can jump in, look at that recording. And I actually have offered to all of these to all the students involved, and this is with the agreement of our experts, that I'm happy to connect them with the experts if they aren't able to be in a session live, for example. I'm happy to have get them connected on LinkedIn. Maybe they add each other on LinkedIn. They have a conversation. Maybe if they're both in Nebraska, they get together and have a coffee about careers if it works for both the individuals involved. Maybe they jump on Zoom later on to kind of ask advice. And each of these individuals across this screen has offered to do that. And granted, that can end up being perhaps a lot of time for an expert. No one has responded to me and followed up saying, oh man, I had 20 students reach out to me and all of them want to get coffee and it's just too much. No one has said that. And anytime that would happen, I will happily kind of adjust that. We're still developing the program and trying to make it scalable, but it is important to be able to focus on the individual meaning and the individual value that each student gets as part of the SDG Scholar Program. So again, these individuals get to, the students in the program get to learn from these experts. They get to connect with them. They get to hear their career paths, which is oftentimes just as interesting or more interesting to them than what they do to advance one of the SDGs. And they get to just have them part of their, as part of their professional network, which is valuable. And it creates access to that network building. They don't have to pay for an expensive conference. They don't have to go to a happy hour. They don't have to do the things that are sometimes gatekeeping exercises to keep people from being able to expand their network and be part of those groups. And that's a big thing that we want to do with this program is access and inclusivity. Let's see. There we go. So these are just a couple of the benefits. I've kind of probably touched on each of them already in the course of our time, but just to kind of wrap up, we find that this is useful. The students get to advance their knowledge of goals. They get to figure out how to apply their skills, their knowledge towards these big shared global challenges. And that oftentimes is enough to kind of help them directionalize a career and kind of chart a course. But then we give them at least two, oftentimes a lot more, experts and professionals to add to their own professional networks, from them to learn from, but also to be connected with, and to maybe they just follow them on LinkedIn. They follow George Burba and he posts all the time and has all these exciting connections, and they learn from him, and they maybe see a job opportunity that he posts a year down the road. There are small but meaningful implications for this kind of engagement. They may connect with Bruno and find that they do find a way to kind of shift their career path more into a healthcare field. They realize a passion that they maybe didn't have before, or understand possibilities that they didn't have before. But then, as I mentioned, they're also connecting peer to peer. You never know who you're going to work with someday, or who might have a job opportunity that they share with you during a class, or just during getting a cup of coffee after a lecture, whatever it is, and how that can impact you later on in your professional path. And last, I didn't really mention this. This is the last element that students get to do as part of this program. If they pursue the badge, they create a unique content piece. So that could be a podcast, it could be a video or an infographic, a data visualization around the learning that they do in the course of this program. And that gets to be just something that they add to their professional portfolio. Maybe they have a number of research papers that are really impressive, but they also get to show that they have the capacity to be creative and make art to communicate some of these big challenges. They might have an incredible existing portfolio in the space of design, because they're an ad major. But then they also did, for this project, they developed their skill in data visualization. And it showcases their diversity of talents and skills, their range for future internship employers or just actual job employers. Students have a lot of opportunities in this. And what we want to do is make it accessible to all. Whether a student has a full-time job that they can't take off and do extracurriculars or do these conferences for, they can asynchronously access all of this, with the exception of the peer-to-peer session. And so that one would be something that maybe they could schedule on a weekend that would work for them and the peer. Sorry for the noise of the little one. And students who maybe have care responsibilities, they have a little one at home, or they have a family member they care for. If they can't normally get out and access some of these opportunities, this program allows them to do so. Like I said, probably all but one of the components are accessible asynchronously, but they're also accessible live if students really want to take advantage of that and ask their questions directly to the experts, etc. Let's see, we have a question in here. Okay, Hannah asks, how many students do you reach each semester? Do you ever run into situations where you have mentors but no students, or vice versa? Great question, Hannah. Sometimes, yes. We have right now about 20 students that are involved in various kind of levels. Some are absolute go-getters and wanted to complete their badge and so do all of the components within a semester, and they did. We have someone like Caitlin Richards who completed a badge in Zero Hunger and came back and wants to do one in climate action now. Or we have a student who maybe went to one expert session and didn't participate more beyond that. And that's okay. This doesn't have to be a high pressure sort of involvement. Students have enough of that the way it is. It doesn't have to be something that adds more stress to their lives. And I want them to know that. It's just something that can add value, can be an opportunity for learning, can be an opportunity for professional growth, if they want it to be. And if this semester they can't, but in 2 semesters they can, after that big intense class is out of their hair, then that's okay too. So we do try to make it flexible. Sometimes that's a challenge. We've never had an absolute no-show for our expert sessions, but we have had pretty small sessions, which they're usually pretty okay with. A one-on-one or 1-on-2 or 3 session oftentimes turns out to be pretty meaningful because students get the chance to ask questions without a huge group in front of them. They get the chance to kind of engage in a more personal way with the expert in question. Where are the badges housed is asked by Teresa. And is there an annotation on their transcripts? Excuse me. Great question, Teresa. The badges are housed within our college. The idea of digital credentials is kind of new still. We're in the sort of pilot phases of that at the university. At this moment, it's housed within our college or our Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources. There are a lot of other badges offered by Extension and other kind of entities within our institute. And so at this moment, that's where they're living. I believe they're going to be kind of university-wide, maybe housed within a digital learning kind of department if that ends up being developed. But right now, I work with our institute and our College of Ag and Natural Resources. And so that's why I've created this program, because that's all kind of living in our world. And is there an annotation on the transcript? No, these are specifically non-credit badges. And so for some, that's not really a great aspect. For others, it's good. For one reason, it's free because there's no tuition, there's no credit bearing aspects. They are having to pay extra, which is another piece of this that looks at access. But it's also something you can get a certificate or something else or a minor if you want something to be annotated on your transcript. This is not going to be one of those things. It's going to be something that you put on your CV, that you put on your LinkedIn profile, that you talk about maybe in an interview when an employer asks, what did you do outside of your major during college? What did you do to kind of say that you really wanted to showcase your passions for doing good, for making the world a better place? That said, in my opinion, not everything that ends up on your transcript ends up being seen, unfortunately. I don't think I've ever shown a transcript to any employer. I've certainly used transcripts for other purposes, but I've definitely never shown a transcript to an employer before. And so I had to have that in mind as I think about how we design this program. But things that I put on my CV and things that I put on my LinkedIn profile are definitely visible to an employer. And I really encourage students to use this as an excuse to not only add this to their LinkedIn, for example, but be active on their LinkedIn profile, because it's a huge opportunity for them in terms of network building and job opportunities. Okay, let's see. I think we have another question here. Are there resources to teach students how to put them on a resume or CV? At this moment, no. We kind of have informal lessons about that in the course of our time together. And as I engage with students in the course of their progress through the badge and just in the program in general, I'm always happy to kind of sit down one-on-one with students to explore that. Being active and having a complete LinkedIn profile is something I really, really hit hard. And not all students do or see the importance of doing it because they might be a little bit social media burnt out, which is really reasonable. But I do encourage students to utilize LinkedIn and some platforms like sometimes Twitter and Mastodon and others that are seen a lot by possible employers, depending on your field. Great questions. Other questions before I wrap up here. Really quick, I am just going to kind of plug one more time for the University Global Coalition's Action and Awareness Week for the SDGs. It is happening this week. There are a number of really exciting events happening across the US and the world by partner institutions. This is one of those. We have a second event looking at a cool project one of our alumni made about our faculty work towards the SDGs. And that's going to be on there as well. But I think it's just 2 events for UNL, so don't worry, it's not just all Nebraska events. Let's see, anyone other questions in the chat? Now, last, I'm just going to put this pitch out there. I would love to bring in folks as experts. I'm always recruiting for experts. We always need them. It doesn't have to happen at the same time every semester or every part of the year. It can be at different times because we have students, like I said, joining at different times, available at different times. And sometimes when we bring someone in as an expert in this way, it can develop a relationship with that individual and that organization that was unexpected. That kind of turns into bigger things. And I've seen that numerous times with the experts we've pulled in. So there's a great kind of institutional benefit in that aspect of it. But I'd also just love to be connected with you all. If you have a passion for one of these SDGs or more than one, your work relates to it, please reach out. I would love to chat with you about seeing if this makes sense for you, if you'd like to join us, or if you'd like to just talk more about this program, talk about maybe starting something similar at your own institution, anything like that. So with that, I will just probably close it up unless we have any more questions. And I really appreciate your attention, your time, your patience with my little wee one here who joined us. And I can finish up early.